Hello, Mrs. Pierce here. Today we are going to talk about using proportions to solve percent problems. So get your toolkit out and let's get started. Okay, so if you have a toolkit, turn to page 28 and let's jot some notes and some examples down. If you don't have a toolkit, well, you can jot this down wherever it might be helpful to you. So we're going to talk about a percent proportion, and pretty much it's exactly what it sounds like. We're going to deal with problems involving percents, and we're going to use a proportion to help us to solve those problems. Remember, a proportion is when I've got two fractions or two ratios that are equal to each other. And see that little equal sign there? So they are equal. And basically, a percent is part of a whole. And so we're just going to write two ratios that are both parts to wholes. Now, the word percent, let me write it down here. The word percent actually means out of, okay, that's that per part. And cent, think about how many cents are in a dollar. There's 100, by the way. How many years are in a century? There's 100. So that word cent is kind of like the root word that means 100. So the word percent just means how many out of 100. So if you look at your proportion here, in the bottom, it's always going to be 100. So on the top is your percent. Whatever percent the problem is talking about, that number always goes over 100 because that's what a percent is. It's out of 100. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of some of these things here, or not. Okay, and so then since the number out of 100, that is our part to whole, whatever other numbers we're talking about, we need to think about, is this number a part or is this number a whole? And sometimes I like to say it's the word is over the word of. That can be helpful. Usually the words or the numbers near the word is our part, and usually the number around the word of is going to be the whole amount. So let me just show you some examples so you can get started. Okay, so the first example, and you guys can write these 4 examples that I'm going to give you in your toolkit as well. What is 15% of 60? Well, the very first thing, when I know I'm doing a problem dealing with percents, is I set up a proportion, or at least the 2 fraction bars, and I put 100 there because 100 is always there when we're talking about percents. And then I go back to my problem and I look for which part is the percent. And check it out. It says 15%. So that is the one that I know is going to go over 100. I don't need to worry about changing it to decimal form because that's what this 100 takes care of, okay? The 100 takes care of putting it into decimal form. And then it says out of 60. Well, 60 is going to be my whole amount. So out of 60 is in the bottom. And it says what is, that's like saying what's the part. So I'm going to just put an X there. You can use any number or any letter that you want, but I'm just going to use X. And now the way that we solve a proportion is going to be the same way that we can figure out if 2 ratios actually form a proportion. I'm going to cross multiply. Now, X times 100, we don't know what X is, right? So I'm just going to write it as 100 times X. And there's an equal sign in the middle, and then I'm going to do 60 times 15. And when I do 60 times 15, I'm going to get 900. And now check it out. 100 times something is 900. I'm going to divide by 100 because that will cancel that one out. But then on the other side, I'm going to get that X is equal to 9. So that would be my final answer. 9 is 15% of 60. All right, example 2. 33.6 is 42% of what? I'm going to write my fraction bars for my proportion. I'm going to put 100 on the bottom. I always do that to start. And then I'm going to look back in the problem and check it out. I see that it's 42%. So that is what goes over 100. And then the of, or my whole amount, says of what? So I don't know that. Whenever it's the what, that's where I'm going to put X. And then the 33.6, that is my part. that I know. So I know the part this time. I don't know the whole amount. And now I'm just going to cross multiply. 33.6 times 100 is 3360. So 3,360. There's always an equal sign in the middle because I know that they're supposed to be equal. And 42 times x. Well, I don't know what x is. So I'm just going to write that as 42 times x. Last time I divided by 100 because it was 100 times x. This time I'm going to divide by 42. That'll give me a giant 1. Divide by 42. And when I take 3,360 divided by 42, we get 80. So x equals 80, and there's my answer. So 33.6 is 42% of 80. Okay, make sure you have these down as examples in your toolkit. I'm going to do 2 more. You can always pause if you need to. Okay, so 142.5 is what percent of 50? Here I go again, writing my fraction bars for my proportion. I'm going to put 100 on the bottom because that is always on the bottom. And so now I'm going to go back and look. This time it says what percent. That means I don't know the percent, so that's where we're going to put an x. You can put a p if you want, p for percent. Remember, it really doesn't matter what variable you use. And then it says of 150, that's my total. So the 150 is on the bottom. And I know that 142.5 is my part. So 142.5, now I'm going to cross multiply. 142.5 times 100 is 14,250. 150 times x, I don't know what x is, so I'm just going to write that as 150 times x. And then this time, I'm dividing by 150, since that is what is being multiplied by x. And when you divide 14,250 divided by 150, you get 95. Now here's the deal. We were asking what percent, so my answer this time is that x is 95%. So make sure you label your answers there. All right, and then the last one says 60 is what percent of 50? So here's my fraction bar to set up my proportion. I put 100 there, and it's saying what percent again, so that means my percent is an x. And then it says out of 50. So 50 is my total, or my whole amount, and then my part is 60. So you might be thinking, hey, that's kind of weird. It's okay. What that's going to tell me is that my answer is going to be more than 100%. So please don't fall into that trap of putting the bigger number on the bottom and the smaller number on top. No, it's whatever your total or the original amount is supposed to be goes on the bottom, okay? All right, so I'm going to cross multiply. 60 times 100 is 6,000. 50 times x is 50x. Since I don't know what x is, I'm going to divide by 50. And when I divide by 50, this time I'm going to get 120. We were asking about a percent, so that is 120%. So notice it is more than 100 because 60 was more than 50. And there we go. Okay, so again, make sure you have these as examples. If you are not done, just go ahead and pause it until you're done writing them down. And let's... Okay, so here's 3 examples that I want you to try. I want you to pause it, try them all yourself, and then unpause when you're done and see if you are correct. Okay, so I'm going to run through these really quickly. I've got my proportion here set up. I see that it's 80%, so that goes over 100. I don't know the total, but I do know that the part is 72. And when I cross multiply, I'm going to get 7,200 equals 80x, dividing both sides by 80. And I get 90. So 72 is 80% of 90. Okay, next one. Setting up my percent proportion here. 30 is what percent of 45? I don't know the percent, so that's where my x is going to go. It says it's out of 45, so that's my original or my starting point, and the part is 30. 30 times 100 is 3,000 or 3,000. 45 times x, I don't know x, so that's just 45 times x. And I'm going to divide by 45 this time. By the way, if you haven't been, you can use a calculator for these. And so 3,000 divided by 45 is, notice you get 66.6 repeating. Well, let's just round that up and say that it is approximately 67%. So sometimes you are going to have to round, okay? If you wanted to be exact, it would be 66 2/3%, but we'll just round up to 67%. 66%, by the way, would not be accurate enough. We always need to round it if we're going to chop something off. All right, last problem. There's my percent proportion. It is 6% this time. And it's saying, what is 6% of $60? Notice we're talking about money this time, so keep that in mind. We don't know the part. So when I cross multiply, 6 times 60 is 360. 100 times x is 100x. I'm going to divide by 100 this time. And when I divide by 100, I'm going to get 3.6. Now, since we're talking about money, it's actually $3.60 to keep it even, okay? Basically, what we just did is a tax problem. Sales tax is 6%, so if we bought something like maybe a video game that was $60, and when you wanted to know what tax would be, it would end up being $3.60. All right, make sure you ask your teacher if you have any questions.